Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Kuzaima binti Amin Zaki, and today I will be presenting on my case study entitled Chicago Cyanide Murders Part 2, a case study in cellular respiration. This is the introduction for this case study. As you can see, these are some of the victims that were involved in the Chicago Cyanide murders, and as you can see, I've stated that most of these victims had passed away due to taking a capsule of Tylenol. So, when these victims were admitted into the hospital, their symptoms that they experienced was, one of them was weakness, dizziness, being flushed, headaches, shortness of breath, and many more. But unfortunately, when they passed away, their physicians had discovered that most of these victims had died of hypoxia, which is lack of oxygen, and major mitochondrial damage caused the heart, lungs, and liver tissues to experience massive cell death. And their toxicology report shows that these victims had been poisoned with cyanide. So, what is cyanide? Cyanide is basically a chemical that has carbon-nitrogen bound, but not most of these cyanide are poisonous. Some are even found in certain seeds and fruit stones. For example, bitter almonds, apricots, apples, and peaches. For those that are declared poisonous, for example, sodium cyanide, potassium cyanide, and hydrogen cyanide. So the question for this case study is, what is the relationship between ETC, electron transport chain, and oxygen? So I can briefly explain that in ETC, electron transport chain, electrons are passed from one molecule to another, where energy is released and energy is released in this electron transfer to form an electrochemical gradient. Now, oxygen sits at the end of electron transport chain, where it accepts electrons and it picks up protons to form water. For the next process, which is chemiosmosis, where energy is stored in the gradient used to make ATP. So, in ETC, the electrons firstly are passed neither from NADH or FADH2 molecules to neither complex 1 or complex 2. After that, it passes the electron to coenzyme Q, complex 3, cytochrome C, complex 4, and the last is electron acceptor, which is oxygen, where the passing of electrons to oxygen is important because the energy released from complex 4 is used to generate ATP in the next process, which is chemiosmosis. So that is the relationship between ETC and oxygen. So to recall, mitochondrion is sometimes called as powerhouse of the cell. So what does this mean, and why is mitochondrion so important? So mitochondrion is called powerhouses, or in some articles they are referred to as power plants, because mitochondria provides over 90% of ATP required for cell metabolism, and it says that the cell's main energy carrying molecule, where mitochondria is also involved in cellular respiration, where it makes ATP from nutrients and glucose that we consume every day. So mitochondria is important. Why? For example, it not only involves in cell metabolism, it also has other specific functions, which is cell growth, cell signaling, and it also plays a role in redox status. So it goes to show that mitochondria has many functions, and it is important for them to keep going, making ATP, so we can stay alive and stay healthy. So L-pill, or known as suicide pill, is used during World War II, where spies could avoid being captured alive. So, given what you know about ATP and cellular respiration, explain why is cyanide so fast reacting. So, cyanide is one of the main effects, where when you consume cyanide, it will firstly attack the oxidative phosphorylation process, which in cellular respiration, where it will bind itself, cyanide, to cytochrome C. As I explained earlier, cytochrome C will transfer the electrons to complex 4. But when you consume cyanide, it will bind itself to cytochrome C, and it will block mitochondrial transport chain, and without oxygen, ATP cannot be generated. So if that happens, cellular hypoxia will occur, and it will lead to metabolic acidosis, and the utilization of oxygen will be followed by impairment of vital functions, where some of these tissues will start to expend their energy and they will start to die. And that is why cyanide kills quickly within a matter of seconds, because it attacks the central nervous system, CNS, and cardiovascular systems will be affected deeply. So given what I know about cyanide poisoning, do you think that giving a person oxygen would be an effective treatment? So in my opinion, yes, giving a person oxygen would be an effective treatment, because according to the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine, the 8th edition, it states that the emergency treatment for cyanide poisoning is to provide 100% of oxygen as soon as possible to the victims that had consumed cyanide. And another treatment is by digesting activated charcoal, so that the activated charcoal will absorb all the toxins and drugs that have been administered in your digestive system. So in conclusion, cyanide is a very lethal compound, and it's a deadly chemical, and it will cause massive damage to the cellular respiration. And you need to remember, when you consume cyanide in electron transport chain, ETC, cyanide will bind itself to cytochrome C, and it will cause a halt to the production of ATP and lead to massive cell death. So if you suspect that you are experiencing cyanide poisoning, it is very important for you to seek medical attention as soon as possible, as I stated before, because cyanide kills within a matter of seconds or minutes. So these are some of the references that I use for this presentation, and that is all from me. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.